Today's message is on the soul power of clear insight. Really, the power of direct revelation, direct experience of the truth of our being, the reality of God being our life. I want to begin with a quote from the beautiful yogi sage Baba Haridas. So appropriate for us. The future is unknown. Whenever we walk toward the unknown, we carry a lamp. In worldly minded people, that lamp is the ego. And in spiritually minded people, that light is the divine presence. The future is unknown. Whenever we walk toward the unknown, we carry a lamp. In worldly minded people, that lamp is the ego. And in spiritually minded people, that light is the divine presence. Both are walking toward the same unknown dark space. One is afraid and the other is fearless. In these few weeks that we've been together online for Sunday Satsang, I have been offering teachings about how we can access our divine potential, our divine resources, our capacities for inner strength that come from our soul powers, how we can call upon those capacities to support us in this time of great challenge and uncertainty. We're all walking toward the unknown, aren't we? We feel that, and it's simply true in this time. And we can notice, depending on our frame of mind and our degree of spiritual consciousness or awareness, we are sometimes fearful and sometimes fearless. We are sometimes anxious and sometimes peaceful. Sometimes able to be content with the present moment, sometimes anxious about the future. The question I want to explore this morning is, well, what is it that makes the difference for us? And how can we find that light of divine presence to guide us? I return again and again to the Bhagavad Gita, a guidebook for spiritually conscious living, for spiritual awakening, for self and God realization, that experience of the divine that clears up our fears and allows us to walk with this light of truth guiding us. In the beginning of the story of the Bhagavad Gita, as many of you know, we find the consummate warrior Arjuna on the battlefield of life, and he is immobilized by his fear and his depression. He doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to fight that battle. He doesn't feel like it's his choice. He's facing the unknown and he can't see his way forward. So as we think about the opening quote this morning, we could say that, you know, at this moment in time when the story begins, Arjuna is holding up the light of ego, and he sees the situation, but he sees it through the lens of his fear. And his journey can be seen to parallel, you know, many of the soul progressions I have been talking about in the past week. So if you're tuning in for the first time today, I encourage you to go back and to listen to the other lessons, because it's been sort of progressive, looking at these different soul qualities. And this soul power of clear insight is one, in a sense, that builds upon the others. At the conclusion of the story in the Bhagavad Gita, of course, Arjuna is a seer. He's a knower of truth, and he's now walking by the light of divine presence, and he is fearless. So he's no longer walking by the light of the ego. His doubts have been cleared, and he vows to follow only divine guidance in his life, to be moved by nothing else. But of course, that's not, you know, where his story begins. it begins with his confusion and his resistance. He's reluctant, but he does open up to instruction. We see early on that Lord Krishna, who is playing the role of the higher true self, the divine self, tries, and Arjuna, who is the seeking soul, resists. So everything, every argument that the higher true self brings, Arjuna responds with his, his yeah, but. But it turns out, of course, that he's cornered, he's stuck. And so, if you're like everyone else at this time, at this global situation, I think it's impossible for us not to feel stuck, not to feel cornered at times. And so this is the dilemma of Arjuna. He's stuck. He's on this battlefield he doesn't want to be on, but he has no other place to go, no other place to turn. So he becomes open to learn, open to see, open to guidance. He surrenders and he asks the Lord to help him. So then he begins to listen. So his point of reference changes from, I don't want this to, okay, teach me how I can be, teach me, what is the right thing to do at this time. And this comes from that place where he just feels he has nowhere else to turn. He turns to the Lord and he says, help me. I will listen. So from there, the text goes into the higher true self, Lord Krishna, giving chapter upon chapter of teaching for Arjuna about the nature of the soul as being indestructible, his spirit being his true nature, everything else in the world being subject to change, insights about the nature of the path, how the Lord can be approached from many different angles, through love, through wisdom, through selfless service. He gives an insight about the mind and how to meditate, what things in life to embrace and what things to avoid, to live a balanced life, how to have equanimity in changing. He gives them all this information. But then somewhere we would call it maybe the high point of the text, there is a change that happens. So all this time, Arjuna is being prepared. He's given the spiritual teaching and he's listening. He's taking it in. And in the 10th chapter, the Lord is giving he's pouring forth this illumination about the reality of spirit being all in all. He says, I am, meaning the Lord, the divine self, the divine reality. I am all of it. And in the 10th chapter, we find that beautiful verse that says, I am the self seated in the hearts of all creatures. I am spirit. I am everything. I am all in all. I am the self seated in the heart of everyone, of all creatures. I am the beginning, the middle, and the very end of beings. And this chapter 10 is very poetic. It's very beautiful about, I am the oceans and I am the heavens and I am everything on earth. It's quite a beautiful chapter. And he says, it is from me, from the divine reality, that this whole creation unfolds. I destroy the darkness of ignorance by shining the lamp of wisdom. And so for those who practice yoga, we understand that this shining light, the shining light of wisdom, is the divine presence that is shining in our purified mind, in the buddhi, in the purified intellect, that this light of the self, which dwells within us, then can shine into the mind through the illumined intellect when it is purified. So Arjuna, the seeking soul, listening to this, says, okay, show me, show me. Open my eyes that I might see this vision of truth. And this is a prayer that, you know, we see in so many traditions. It's in Psalm 19, and that beautiful hymn that I sing for you once in a while, you know, open my eyes that I might see vision of truth thou hast for me. This is the prayer that Arjuna puts forth. You know, he says, you know, you have you have prepared me, you have told me all of this, but let me see it, let me know it for myself. And so it is then in chapter 11 where there is this experience that Arjuna has of direct perception, of seeing how it is that God is all in all. And it's an awesome vision. It's a terrifying vision. It's an all-consuming vision. But God becomes real to him. So it moves from theory, from simply teaching that he's listening to, he's thinking about, to direct experience. So I want to read to you a little bit from this chapter 11 in the Bhagavad Gita. And I'm reading from S. Radhakrishnan's translation of the Bhagavad Gita and some of his commentary. It is called the Lord's Transfiguration. Arjuna wishes to see the universal form of God. So I want to know that this is true. Let me know it for myself, not just hear about it, but actually perceive it directly. So Arjuna says, the supreme mystery, the discourse concerning the self, capital S, which you have given out of grace for me, by this my bewilderment is gone. So here, the illusion that things of the world exist in themselves and maintain themselves, that they live and move apart from God, has disappeared. So Arjuna has, he has a perception, he has an intellectual understanding that God is all in all, that we are not separate from God. But here, he wants to know this. He wants to experience it so it becomes real for him, not just a concept. And then he continues, the birth and passing away of things has been heard by me in detail from you. And also I've heard about your imperishable majesty. But I desire to see your supreme divine form. And then the commentary says, it is one thing to know that the eternal spirit dwells in all things, and another to have the vision of it. Arjuna wishes to see the universal form, the visible embodiment of unseen divinity. So in the commentary, it says, the abstract metaphysical truth should be given visible reality. The abstract metaphysical truth should be given visible reality. And then he says, you know, if you, Lord, think that it can be seen by me, then reveal it to me. And so he asks, open my eyes that I can see. If you think it is possible for me to see this truth, to experience it, to know it for myself, then let that happen. And so the Lord says to him, behold, my forms 100-fold, 1,000-fold, various in kind, divine, of various colors and shapes. So Arjuna sees into the cosmic process here. And what I want to point out from the commentary, I think, is really important to all of us. So Radhakrishnan writes, the vision is not a myth or a legend, but spiritual experience. So I want to listen to that very carefully. So this that is written about, that I'm speaking about this morning, this vision of the divine that becomes manifests, that becomes realized by the seeking soul, the commentator Radhakrishnan says, is not a myth or a legend, but it is a spiritual experience. And then he goes on to say, in the history of religious experience, we have a number of such visions. And he talks about how we see it in many traditions: the transfiguration of Jesus, the vision of Saul on the road to Damascus, Joan of Arc's visions. And I would add, Moses and his encounter with the burning bush, realizing that he is on holy ground, Muhammad in his cave. So we are to understand that this mystical vision is the direct experience of divine reality in and as and through our life. And in the 7th verse, it says, "Here today, behold the whole universe, moving and unmoving, and whatever else you desire to see, all unified in my body." And Krishna says to Arjuna, but you can't see this with your human eye. For that, you need spiritual vision. And so he opens his quote unquote eye of understanding. And Radhakrishnan includes in his commentary the vision of Hildegard of Bingen, a Christian mystic. And so I want to share that with you before I conclude this lesson today. Saint Hildegard reports a vision in which she saw a fair human form who declared his identity in words reminiscent of the Gita description. "I am that supreme and fiery force that sends forth all the sparks of life. Death has no part in me, yet I do allot it. Wherefore I am girt about with wisdom as with wings. I am that living and fiery essence of the divine substance that glows in the beauty of the fields. I shine in the water. I burn in the sun and the moon and the stars. Mine is that mysterious force of the invisible wind. I sustain the breath of all living. I breathe in the greens and in the flowers, and when the waters flow like living things, it is I formed those columns that support the whole earth. All these live because I am in them and I am their life." So of course we can find similar writings in many traditions, but as I come to close this lesson this morning, I could hear myself say, and perhaps hear you say, well, yes, this is so beautiful. It's such a high teaching, but wait, I'm not a mystic. I'm an ordinary person. So how can I know that God is real? How can I light the lamp of spiritual presence that will guide me forward in this time without fear? I am just an ordinary person. How can I light the lamp of spiritual presence? How can I know that God is real? I would say, as Arjuna did in our story that illustrates this for us this morning, take the teachings to heart. That God is omnipresent, that there's only one reality. And if you say to yourself, I am ordinary, that is great, because the truth is there is nothing more ordinary than God. Think about that. Ordinary means that which is common, that which is commonly encountered. Nothing is more common than God, which is all in all, which is everything. So we take the teachings to heart and understand that God must be right where we are. And we ask to be shown, just like Arjuna did. We ask to be shown. God, reveal yourself, reveal yourself, reveal yourself to me. That was Paramahansa Yogananda's prayer. reveal yourself to me. So look, listen, watch, be present in the body and with your breath. Relax the narrow sense mind. Let the mind sink into the heart. Practice being aware of the presence of God by practicing being present. Practice the presence by practicing being present. So our prayer, our study, our meditation all trains us to be able to practice the presence by taking the teachings as our doorway to enter into communion with life. But we won't find this living presence in the teachings. We find the living presence in our own hearts, in our own being. So that's where we must direct our attention. And that opens us to new possibilities, to see the way forward, to carry the lamp of awareness of divine presence. I want to close with a poem by Mark Nepo. This is from his book, The Way Under the Way, The Place of True Meeting. And this particular poem is called Seeing It Through. So think about this as walking through this time in your life now with the lamp of awareness of divine presence. To see it and walk through it when it opens is everything. To see it and walk through it when it opens is everything. It's how Picasso discovered Cubism, how Miles Davis stumbled onto Dolphin Street, how Derek Jeter knew the relay would land between first base and home and no one else would be there. It's through this opening that Albert Schweitzer saw his hospital in Africa long before he was a doctor. It's here that we all see love waiting in its open field, though there are storms all around. It's here that we all see love waiting in its open field, though there are storms all around. It's what a whale goes for each time it breaches. It's how I find the poems. It's how the kind know how to help. To see it and walk through it when it opens is everything. May this week be a week of practicing the presence, a week of divine revelation for you. Om.